Hello, I'm Jonathan Hankins. Welcome to the second in this short series of lectures on responsible innovation. In the first lecture, we looked at the concept of responsible innovation from the perspective of RI, responsible innovation, as a form of technology assessment, before offering a framework of some of its main characteristics and how these might be seen in practical terms. Then we thought about the Collingridge dilemma, how the moment of intervention affects what can be known and done about the trajectory of a process, before arguing that intervention from the design stage onward would be the best, if it's possible. In this lecture, we take a look at the European Union's perspective on responsibility and its implementation within its various calls for funding. Anybody working with or alongside a project that has been funded by the European Union will have to address the issues surrounding responsible innovation. It's a cross-cutting notion. Through Horizon 2020, and all winning projects will have had to include an RI section in their applications and will have to demonstrate that they understand the concept and that they are applying the concept throughout the entire project. It's not just something that can be strapped on by an external. Through its commission, the EU has taken the decision to approach the RI problem through funding. Funders can be seen as extremely important because they can, to some extent, determine which types of project are able to run. The implementation of this approach therefore attempts to steer research. So funding, rather than legislation, becomes a tool for change. The EU has its own framework that's used within the funding and reporting procedures, explained in a series of documents, all of which are available online, and you will find links in the reading list. It also uses a slightly different language in that it refers to responsible research and innovation, RRI, rather than just responsible innovation, RI. This is because the concept is used throughout its research funding. So the language of research is embedded into the concept as an extension of the various forms of RI as discussed in the first video. This doesn't mean that it's not relevant for business, though, because research is not just seen by the European Commission as just scientific research, but also as R&D within the business setting. And as I said earlier, anyone with dealings with organisations that participate in any way in these calls for funding will have to address these issues. Let's take a look at the EU perspective. From the EU Horizon 2020 website, we find the following. It's a description. Responsible research and innovation, RRI, implies that societal actors, researchers, citizens, policymakers, business, third sector organisations, etc., work together during the whole research and innovation process in order to better align both the process and its outcomes with the values, needs, and expectations of society. The website goes on by stating that in practice, RRI is implemented as a package that includes multi-actor and public engagement in research and innovation, enabling easier access to scientific results, the take-up of gender and ethics in the research and innovation content and process, and formal and informal science education. Now, what this means in practical terms is spelt out in one of their documents, a link to which you will find. You can read up on this later, but as an overview, the European Union describes responsible innovation or responsible research and innovation as the following: engagement, gender equality, science education, open access, ethics, and governance. Engagement implies that societal challenges should be framed on the basis of widely representative social, economic, and ethical concerns and common principles, on the strength of joint participation of all societal actors: researchers, industry, policymakers, and civil society. Gender equality addresses the underrepresentation of women, indicating that human resource management must be modernized and that the gender dimension should be integrated in the research and innovation content. Science education faces the challenge to better equip future researchers and other societal actors with the necessary knowledge and tools to fully participate and take responsibility in the research and innovation process. Open access states that RRI must be both transparent and accessible. Free online access should be given to the results of publicly funded research. And this means not only the publications, but also the data. Ethics requires that research and innovation respects fundamental rights and the highest ethical standards in order to ensure increased societal relevance and acceptability of research and innovation outcomes. And finally, governance addresses the responsibility of policymakers to prevent harmful or unethical developments in research and innovation. And this is the fundamental basis for the development of the rest of the dimensions and the entire structure. Now, we might see this as a structured or bureaucratic approach to making the concept workable. And in some ways, that is really what it's designed to be. It's designed to sit within the bigger picture, that of addressing societal challenges through EU funding. So what are the societal challenges? Well, the EU has published a series of societal challenges with the aim of funding research to address some of these issues. The challenges are the following: health, demographic change and well-being, food security, sustainable agriculture and forestry, marine and maritime and inland water research, and the bioeconomy, secure, clean and efficient energy, smart, green and integrated transport, climate action, environment, resource efficiency and raw materials. Europe in a changing world, inclusive, innovative, and reflective societies. Secure societies, protecting freedom and security of Europe and its citizens. So a lot of the projects funded through the Horizon Call involve the introduction of the concept of RI or RRI to businesses that work within these fields broadly defined here. And as we see, these fields are pretty broad. So a lot of businesses and organisations working within what seem like different fields, doing different things, have become involved. Much, if not all, of this development has been brought about by the vision and involvement of one man, René von Schomburg. Von Schomburg has worked within the European Commission Directorate General for Innovation for about 20 years and has progressively managed to push this agenda through the stream of calls for funding. He's also well known in the academic field of RI, as he wrote one of the best known definitions in use today. He states that responsible innovation should be a transparent, interactive process by which societal actors and innovators become mutually responsive to each other with a view to the ethical acceptability, sustainability, and societal desirability of the innovation process and its marketable products, in order to allow a proper embedding of scientific and technological advances in our society. If we go back and take a look at how the European Commission defined responsible innovation in 2011, that I mentioned at the start of this video, we see much influence. We see how much influence this definition has had on EU thinking. Societal actors are mentioned, working together during the whole process in order to better align the process and the results with the expectations of society. So I think that the academic definition shows a clear relationship to the European Union definition, and both can be applied to the business world, particularly, I believe, to companies and organisations that work in technical fields. Any company that innovates its production can see these definitions or goals, if we want to see them as that, and incorporate them into their innovation, R&D, and personnel strategy. Which brings the obvious question of how you might do that. Well, one argument is that you do it through design. Dutch academic Jeroen van der Hoeven has a suggestion. He talks about a problem of moral overload. So a designer or somebody preparing a project is faced by a series of moral necessities, obligations. An imagined product or process has to fulfill certain criteria. It may have to be affordable, sustainable, aesthetically beautiful, open access. There are many possible moral obligations. Now, it's possible that they cannot all be met at the same time. So, for example, cost may influence security of data management or sustainability. We might like to think of van der Hoeven's idea as represented in a circle with sectors, or a spider web, Each sector in the spider web represents one of these issues. There is an inner circle, and that circle represents the goal of a responsible approach. It's a target, and what we want is to make the target as circular as possible. As changes in each sector affect each other sector, the position of our product or process as mapped by a circular line moves around the target. If we make it cheaper, it moves towards the centre in the sector of cost. But it's pulled away from the centre by the fact that this affects or may affect the sustainability factor. So the goal would be to come to a compromise position based upon the movement so that the product can remain as responsible as possible with as few outliers as possible. So a circle in the centre is the target. That is what is aimed for. And we can call that a field of responsibility. So we are imagining a target. Now the target is made by mapping the different positions within the different sectors. So it's a line, but it makes a circle. If we have an outlier, such as in cost is very high, the circle is no longer a circle. And it looks something like the body of Baba Papa with a head section. We try and bring the head section in by bringing cost down, and that will affect the other sectors, and so it will push the line out. And the objective is to make as close to a circle as possible, and that is the compromise that leads us to the maximum amount of responsibility according to this Van Hoven model. Now, one of the problems for businesses particularly is transparency. As we stated earlier, the public needs to know what you're doing in order to judge what you're doing and give you feedback. And that is not always easy in a business. How can a system, this is my question, how can a system be devised and operated that can allow the sharing of information, honesty about possible implications for the product, and the incorporation of public voices within the process, while still maintaining a competitive edge for the business? Now, I have some examples of different approaches to describe in the next lecture. Firstly, I would like to recap the contents of this section. The EU has taken the concept of responsible innovation and run it throughout its funding programme. This is an attempt to implement the concept by funding projects that have addressed the issues that responsible innovation raises. Anyone having any involvement with any EU-funded research or working alongside anyone else who does will have to address the problems raised through this responsible innovation debate. Anyone who implements these ideas will have to address the problem that maybe you can't always have everything, as compromise in one sector will have effect upon others. In order to build up capacity, we might need to rethink how we see business and build systems that benefit from the sharing of information of all types. In the third and final section of this video presentation, we will look at some of the practices that have been experimented with within responsible innovation in the research and business world to date. Thank you.